Welcome to lesson 7.6 of Ecom Entrepreneurs Academy. In this lesson, we will discuss how to set up automatic Amazon sponsored ads. So Amazon sponsored ads, what in the world are they? They are ads for which you can pay to have your product listing show up when a relevant keyword or keyword phrase is searched. You can potentially have your product listing show up on page 1, 2, or 3, or etc., like one of the top few pages for a relevant keyword search. So this is amazing. This is huge because even though your product listing actually shows up on, let's say, page 18 or page 25 or 30 for a relevant keyword search, with Amazon sponsored ads, it can actually show up on one of the first few pages, one of the top pages, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So this is extremely crucial and very, very beneficial to you just starting out on Amazon selling your product. So sponsored ads can show up horizontally on either the top, middle, or bottom of the search results page. And these look almost exactly like normal product listings, except that they have a sponsored label, but it's barely noticeable. Sometimes people are hesitant to click on an ad, but this is not a problem with Amazon sponsored ads because they don't really look like ads. Okay, so I'm about to show you an image of how they look. They can also show up vertically, right? So as I mentioned, they can show up horizontally on either the top of the page or the bottom of the page or even somewhere in the middle of the page, or they can show up vertically on the right side of the search results page. So again, these are the two examples. Horizontally, you can see here how they would show up, and then vertically also you can see how they would show up on the right side of the screen. So the page and the position of your ad depends on your daily budget, which you control, your bid per click, which you control, your competition, which of course you do not control, and your keyword searches, which you may be able to control if you're using manual ads, which we'll get into later. Okay, so again, as I mentioned, to reiterate that there are different pages. So there's page 1, page 2, page 3, depending on what keyword is searched. And there are also different positions of the ads, right? Whether it's horizontal or vertical, and what spot you get on the horizontal or vertical ad, that depends on all of these different factors. So the strategy, right? I call this strategy test to best, okay? When you test, your ads do best. When you don't test, you've guessed and you've messed up. I know that's corny, but I just had to kind of develop somewhat of a framework here so that you remember test to best, okay? So the only way you can really do well and the best in with your Amazon sponsored ads and have them perform the best is to really test, right? There's no strategy that works 100% perfect or has been proven across all different categories. Okay, every single product, every single market has its own different factors and different circumstances. And so, what I do with my ads may not be or may not work for you in your product, in your market. Okay, but generally, right, I'm going to provide you with some guidelines with regards to your sponsored ads. But again, it's based on the concept of testing because that's how you will perform best with your Facebook, or sorry, with your Amazon sponsored ads. So the test to best strategy, what is it? Numbers are week numbers 1 and 2. Okay, so the first 2 weeks when you start your Amazon sponsored ads, you're going to do an automatic ad campaign, and we're going to call this automatic ad campaign number 1. And in this ad campaign, you're going to bid low, right? So you're going to bid somewhere around 50 cents or so, and your daily budget is going to be $10 to $15. Okay, your weeks 3 and 4, you're going to also again do an automatic ad campaign. We'll call this automatic ad campaign number 2. You're going to bid high. Okay, so you're going to bid somewhere around $1.50, and your daily budget again is going to be $10 or $15. So again, the first 2 weeks when you set your ad campaign up, your automatic ad campaign, you're going to bid low, which is somewhere around 50 cents. And then when you are done with the first 2 weeks, you're going to do a second automatic ad campaign. You're going to stop the first one and you're going to start a second one, and you're going to bid high on this one. The daily budget's going to remain the same, but your bid, or your click bid, is going to be somewhere around 150. So we're going to test out these two bids, a lower bid and then a higher bid, which will give us some great data on what keywords are performing best for our product for these two ad campaigns. Then once those 4 weeks are done, weeks 5 and onward, we're going to do a third automatic ad campaign, which we'll call automatic ad campaign number 3. And what we'll bid and what our daily budget will be essentially will be based on the performance of our automatic ad campaigns, right? So the ones we set up during the first 4 weeks, ad campaigns numbers 1 and 2, based on the data that we get from those ad campaigns, we're going to bid, right? So what, were the lower bids, was the lower bid better or was the higher bid better, right? And how, to what extent? So based on that data, we can set up a third automatic ad campaign that, because we've tested those first two campaigns and those two bids, we can kind of figure out where the ideal number should be in terms of what we should bid, okay? And then the daily budget also will probably leave around $10 to $15, but again, we can adjust this later. And also at the same time, so once these first 4 weeks are done, in week 5, not only are we going to set up an automatic ad campaign, right, based on the performance of the first two automatic ad campaigns that we set up in the first 4 weeks, but we're also going to set up our first manual ad campaign, which we'll get into in the next lesson. But we're going to set up our first manual ad campaign, and the bid will be based on the performance again of our automatic ad campaigns numbers 1 and 2. We can download reports to get data on those automatic ad campaigns, again, which we'll get into a little bit later. And then we can set up the manual ad based on whichever keywords were the best performing. And daily budget also, it's going to be around $10 to $15, which we can also adjust later. So Amazon sponsored ads best practice. You may have noticed on the previous two screens that when I talked about the bids for the first two automatic ad campaigns, the lower bid was 51 cents and the higher bid was $1.51. It wasn't 50 cents, and there's a reason behind that. Always bid 1 cent higher than a common number. So for example, if the bid was 75 cents, or if that's what you wanted to bid potentially, then don't bid 75 cents, rather bid 76 cents. Okay, similarly, instead of $1.50, you can bid $1.51. And the reason we do that is because when you bid 1 cent higher than a common number, such as 75 cents or $1.50 or whatever, then you'll actually beat some of your competitors. So because those are the most common numbers, or even numbers or whatever, that people generally go for, by bidding just 1 cent higher, you may be actually beating out some of your competitors and getting a better spot in your sponsored ads just for that 1 cent increase. Automatic Amazon sponsored ads. Why are they called automatic? So now let's get into some of the nitty gritty. I mentioned some things like bid clicks, or click bids, and daily budgets and whatnot, and other things. So let's actually get into it and kind of understand what all of this means. So why are these ads called automatic ads? Because Amazon handles the keyword targeting. This means that Amazon decides for which keywords and keyword phrases your product listing ad will show up based on relevancy. Okay, so Amazon, based on your product, right, it will handle the keyword targeting. So if someone, for example, if your product is cookie cutters, then when someone searches, let's say spatula or lemon squeezer, obviously Amazon knows not to show your product when someone searches that. And when someone searches a relevant keyword like cookie cutter or stainless steel cookie cutters, or cookie cutting kit, or whatever kind of different keywords people may search, Amazon will try its best based on its algorithm to make you show up for those relevant keywords and to not have you show up for any other non-relevant keywords. Okay? So this is both good and bad. The good is that you can start very, very easily. You don't have to figure out, any individual keywords that you want to, bid on, or, figure out which keywords you want to go with. And you can also start very quickly, right? So it's very easy to set it up. It's also very quick to set it up. Literally, you can set up an automatic Amazon sponsored ad campaign in 2 minutes or less. So that's the good part. Another good part, or good thing here, is that you don't have to do any prior keyword research, right? Because Amazon itself takes care of that. So that saves a lot of time and a lot of hassle, that you just basically set up the Amazon sponsored ad, and Amazon takes care of the targeting and the keyword and keyword phrases that your product listing will actually show up for. So that's very, very beneficial. Amazon will also provide you with detailed keyword data in reports for your automatic ad campaign. So that's excellent. Not only do we not need to do any research prior to doing the campaign, but even during the campaign, Amazon is collecting data for us and creating a report which we can access after the campaign is done, or at any time really. But again, we're following a specific strategy of doing it every 2 weeks for the first 4 weeks. And so you can actually download that report once you end that campaign and see all the data that Amazon collected for the different keywords and keyword phrases. So that's amazing. There is, however, a bad, or one or two kind of bad parts to this. Number one, Amazon may have you show up for keywords that are not very relevant or are not likely to lead to a purchase. So just to give you an example of this, if we continue with the cookie cutter example, someone may search, for example, cutter, okay? Or someone may search just the word cookie, for example, right? Now, of course, we know just logically, right, just using common sense, that if someone searches cookie, they're not necessarily, very likely, they're not looking for a cookie cutter. Similarly, if they search cutter, it's not very clear or very even likely that they're searching for a cookie cutter. They may be searching for a box cutter or some other type of cutter, right? But the thing is, with Amazon sponsored ads, especially if it's one of the main keywords, our product might show up for some of these keywords that are irrelevant, okay? And so when someone clicks on our ad, right, we are essentially losing money, right, or spending money in a place where we don't want to, because that keyword is not, was not relevant. So even though someone saw it when they searched cutter, even if they weren't looking for our product, and they may click on our ad for whatever reason, and we kind of lose that click, the money that we paid to have that person click on our ad. So that's kind of one of the negatives. And just to go along with that point, if someone clicks on your ad, you pay for it, okay? So if, again, you're showing up for an irrelevant keyword and someone clicks on your ad, and because it was an irrelevant keyword and they didn't buy your product, or there was a very small chance they would buy your product, then you still paid for that click. Okay, so that's kind of the one bad part. But in my opinion, the benefits, very heavily outweigh the cons, or the negatives. So how do you set up an automatic Amazon sponsored ad? Here's the overview, or the basic steps. So you log into your Seller Central account, you go to the advertising tab, you click on, in the drop down, you click on Campaign Manager, and then once you get to the Campaign Manager, you click on Create a Campaign. So here is the screen that you'll see when you click on Create a Campaign. You can put in the name of the campaign, and again, you can call this automatic ad campaign number one. Your daily budget, you can set it as $10, like I have on this screen. You can put the start date and end date. Again, it should be a period of 2 weeks, as we talked about. Again, this is the test to best strategy. And then you're gonna, of course, select automatic targeting. Okay, so we're gonna talk about manual targeting in the next lesson. But for now, for the first 2 weeks that you're setting up this ad campaign, you're gonna select automatic targeting. And then once you go to the next page, you can essentially give this ad group a name. So you can leave it as is. It should by default be ad group 1. And then the default bid here, you're going to put 51 cents. Okay, so as we discussed, the first 2 weeks of setting up your Amazon sponsored ads, the automatic ones, you're going to have the default bid as 51 cents. And we discussed why not 50 cents but 51, just because you may beat out some of your competition just by bidding 1 cent higher. So bid somewhere around 51 cents. You can, again, change this based on how much you have to invest or put into these ads. So again, it can be a give or take a few cents, but somewhere around this number of 51 cents. And then click save and finish. So on the same page, you can click save and finish. And honestly, that's it. That's the process of setting up your automatic ad campaign. As I mentioned, it's like a 2-minute process, very, very simple, very, very limited things that you have to set up or insert or input. And you can click save and finish, and the automatic ad will start running almost immediately. It may take, I think, a couple of hours or so for for your ads to actually start showing up on Amazon, but that's the process. So evaluating your automatic ads. This is extremely important, and I encourage you, if you've been falling asleep so far because of my boring voice, please bear with me and wake up and really pay attention to this part, because it's very, very important in terms of how to evaluate your automatic sponsored ads. So the first step is to go to advertising, which is the tab on your Seller Central account, and then click on the drop down Campaign Manager. And here is essentially what you'll see. So if you log in to your Amazon Seller Central account, let's say a few days after you start your automatic sponsored ads, you'll see something like this. Okay, so you'll see the name of your campaign, you'll see that it's running, hopefully, you'll see that it's an automatic ad campaign, you'll see the start date and the end date, and then you'll see how much you're bidding per day, or what your kind of max is per day, and then you'll see how much you've spent, which in this case on my screen is 520. You'll see how much you've made from those clicks or from that spend, which in this case is 33.42, and then you'll see the ACOS, okay, which is the advertising cost of sales, which is 16%. So advertising cost of sales is really what we're going to discuss here, and advertising cost of sales, as it shows or as it mentions here, is the percent of attributed sales spent on advertising. This is calculated by dividing the total ad spend by the attributed sales. So essentially it's dividing 520 or sorry 33.42 by 520. So if you spent $4 in advertising resulting in attributed sales of $20, your ACOS would be 20%. Okay, so sorry, it's actually dividing 520 by 33.42. So whatever, that's 16%. So 520, $5.20 is 16% of $33.42. And this is a very important point that it's making here. Your sales data can take up to 48 hours to populate. So as a result, ACOS is not available in the today date range and may be delayed in the yesterday date range. What this basically means is that let's say you start your automatic sponsored ads today, and then in 2 days you log in, or let's say 3 days you log into your account, and you see that you've spent like $6 on ads, but you see $0 in sales. Don't freak out, because those sales that you may have actually made sales, but they haven't shown up here in the data, right? As it says, it takes up to 48 hours to populate. So that's very important to kind of keep in mind, right? You need to give it at least 2 days to figure out if you made any sales. So for example, if you wanted to see if you made any sales in the first 48 hours of after you actually started this ad, you would actually have to wait an additional 48 hours after the first 48 hours to figure out or to see if you made any sales during those first 2 days or those first 48 hours. Hopefully that makes sense. And the number here that again is very, very important is the ACOS, is the advertising cost of sales. I'll show you, or I'll discuss how or what the best way is of evaluating this number, because sometimes people get confused or get misled by this number or this percentage. So evaluating ACOS. So I want to give you a very hypothetical scenario or example. Let's say that you spend $50 on ads, okay? And let's say your sales were $100 and you had 5 orders. So essentially what that means is that you're selling a $20 product and you spent $50 on ads to get those $100 in sales, or those 5 orders, which are $20 each. And so in this case, your ACOS is 50%, right? If I told you spend $50 and get $100 in sales, most people with the ACOS of 50% will be like, yeah, I do that all day. But you have to look at it closer, right? You have to really evaluate that number further before kind of before kind of deciding whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, okay? So here's what I mean. Let's look at it again. $50 is your spend on ads in addition to your product costs and Amazon fees. So if your product cost is $5, right? Let's say that's how much it costs for your supplier to produce and ship your product, that one unit, to Amazon FBA. In addition to that, your Amazon fees are 40%, approximately 40%. Then your cost before ads in this case are $5 times 5 orders plus $8 times 5 orders. So the $5 is your product cost, and of course if there's 5 orders you're going to multiply that by 5, plus $8, which is your Amazon fees, because if your selling price is $20, then your 40%, which Amazon is taking approximately, is around $8. And again, because there's 5 orders, you multiply that by 5. So now your costs, if just for the production cost, shipping, and then your Amazon fees, total in this case are $65. Now just before ads, your profit margin is 35%. So if I made $100 in sales, which means that I sold 5 units, even before I spend anything on ads, my profit margin is 35%, right? 65 over 100. That leaves me with $35 profit. So 35% is my profit margin. That's before ads. Now, if you add 65 to your $50 ad spend, you've actually spent $115 and your sales were only $100 and your ACoS now actually goes over 100%. It's 115%, and that's not so good. Okay, so now you see how that number of ACoS can be deceiving in certain ways, right? Don't just look at the spend you had on ads and then the sales that you made and think that, okay, well, this is great. I'm making money. No, actually, don't forget about the cost that you incurred to produce that product or that unit, and also what you're paying in Amazon fees also for selling that unit. You have to include all of that into the final number to actually make that calculation and see if you're making money or if you're losing money, right? So in this case, we actually spent $115 altogether, and we made sales of $100 on 5 orders, and so we actually lost $15 in these 5 orders if you include all the costs. Okay, so this was just an example. Okay, there are many factors to consider: the production cost, the Amazon fees, the ad spend, and then the sales and the selling price. Okay, all of these are kind of different factors that you have to consider when evaluating ACoS. And again, this was a very basic general example. You have to consider all of these different factors before making a decision or an evaluation, whether it was successful or unsuccessful, or whether it was good or bad, or whether you made money or you lost money. Okay, and then also the number of orders, of course, also plays a role. So that those two things, the selling price and the number of orders, both fall under sales. So these are all the factors that you need to consider. On the other hand, there are many unseen benefits of running sponsored ads. Okay, so one of those unseen benefits, or two of those unseen benefits rather, one is an automatic boost in BSR. So it's actually been proven, for the most part, that just the existence of an Amazon sponsored ad, just running an ad for your product, an automatic sponsored ad, actually boosts your BSR, okay, or boosts the BSR of that product. Also the search rank. So just running ads for your product, regardless of how they're performing, regardless of the bids or the daily budgets and whatnot, it actually gives you a boost in both your BSR and your search rank. Organic sales as a result of the boost in ranking. That's also an unseen benefit of ACoS, or sorry, of running sponsored ads, right? So just to give you an example of this, I made 5 sales via ads, right, which boosted my ranking, which resulted in +3 in organic sales per day. So what I mean by this, right, if you go back to the example that we just went through, where I made 5 sales because of sponsored ads, right? I got $100 in sales. Each of those sales was $20, and I made 5 sales. If those 5 sales boosted my ranking, my BSR and my search rank, and that boost in ranking resulted in +3 in 3 additional sales in organic sales, then I have to consider that as well. So your ACoS will not include these organic sales. Okay, that's very important to keep in mind. And again, this is where evaluating ACoS is very, very important. There are many different things that you can do to evaluate this percentage or this number. So let's go back to the example, the same example that we just went through. Even in the case where my ACoS was 115%, after we included the Amazon costs as well as our production costs, we realized that we actually spent $115 and we only made 100, so our ACoS at that point is 115%. But if I don't run the ad campaign, I make 3 sales a day. Okay? So if I didn't run the ad campaign in the first place, let's say I was making 3 sales a day. Again, this is hypothetical. So no ad, 3 sales a day consistently I'm making. And if I make 3 sales a day, then I'm making $60 a day. $60 minus my cost of 15, okay? Because again, our assumption was that I spent $5 per unit. All right, that's my production cost from the supplier and to ship to FBA. So those 3 sales, or those 3 units that I sold, cost me $5 each, so a total of $15 cost there. I also have Amazon fees of $24, okay? Because again, the assumption was that Amazon's taking around 40% of the selling price of $20. So I have $8 on each sale that I'm paying to Amazon, so that totals $24 for those three sales. If you subtract 15 and 24 from 60, I'm left with $21 profit, okay? Now consider if I run the ad campaign, right? So if I didn't run the ad campaign, if I was making three sales, but as we said, if I was running the ad and that led to a +3 in organic sales, so instead of 3 sales a day, because I'm running the ad, I'm making 6 sales a day, then I'm making $120. If I'm making if each sale is $20, then I'm making 6 sales that result in $120 total revenue. And then I subtract my cost of $15 and my Amazon fees of $24, right? From that $120, and then I also subtract what I spent on ads, okay? So in the first scenario, I didn't run any ads, so there's no ad spend there to subtract from my total revenue. Whereas in this second case, I spent $50 on ads to get 3 additional organic sales, okay? Hopefully this is making sense. So I spent those $50 to get an additional 3 sales a day. And if even when I take out the $50 that I spent on ads plus the 24 plus the 15 that I spent on Amazon fees and the production cost, and I subtract all of that from 120, which is the revenue that I got, I'm actually left with $31 profit. Okay? Now realize that in the first scenario when I didn't run the ad, I made $21 profit. But in the second scenario when I ran the ad because of the 3 additional organic sales, I actually got $31 in profit, which is $10 more in profit. So the main point here is do not take the ACOS solely and make a judgment on the performance of your ad campaign, okay? So remember when we did the example, right, initially, and we saw that our ACOS was 50%. I spent $50 in ads and I made $100 in sales. But again, we talked about how there are negatives to consider where your ads, where we did the evaluation, we included our production costs and our Amazon fees, and we actually saw that we spent 115, not 50, right? But we only made $100 in sales. On the other hand, again, when you consider the organic sales and the boost in ranking and search result ranking and BSR that we got from just running the ads, and we got 3 organic sales, then we actually did end up making a better profit than if we didn't run the ads in the first place, okay? But again, keeping both of those points in hand, the main point here, the overarching point that I want you to take from this entire this second half of this presentation and about ACOS is that you can't take that number or that percentage solely and make a judgment on the performance of your ad campaign. You have to consider other factors. There are negatives, as we mentioned, product costs and Amazon fees, and also positives, the ranking boost and the organic sales to consider.